Hi there, I'm Robert Bahar, and I'm a filmmaker, and I'm very pleased to be hosting a conversation today with director Richard Ladkani of the film YANUNI, which is really a spectacular film that both tells a human journey with two protagonists, Juma and Ugo. It's an environmental film that really helps us understand what's happening in the Brazilian Amazon. Um, and there are moments where cinematically it is a thriller. There are moments where we're in helicopters and we're scared there's going to be a gunfight, and crazy things are happening. And yet it's a film that also always maintains this close observational connection to its protagonists. So, welcome, Richard. And I
Thank
think
you.
you have a really long and fantastic history of making environmental films that are also very visual, very cinematic. And so I'm really curious how you came to make this film and focus very specifically on Juma and Ugo.
Thank you. And thank you for your kind words. Very wonderful to see what you think of the film. That's great. Look, when I just finished my last film, Sea of Shadows, it was the exact time when on the news, on CNN and the New York Times, you could see the Amazon burning. It was the summer where it was on
Right.
fire, and you could see so and so many football fields per day are being burned, and everyone was reporting on it, CNN, New York Times, and I was like, wow, like this is what one of the biggest catastrophes like that I've seen, live on TV. But somehow I felt that there wasn't really like an emotional connection that I felt to the Amazon
Right.
and that the general public had. They were like, oh my God, this is terrible. The Amazon's burning. But it doesn't mean anything besides you see a forest burning and you think that's really bad. So I felt maybe there's a movie that could be made, and that could maybe reconnect us emotionally to this very important topic of the Amazon in a way where we start to care again, where we feel connected in a way that if we see the Amazon burning now, after you've seen the film, maybe you will be like, oh my God, this is terrible. All these indigenous people who are fighting, all these people who are suffering, all of us need this air in the Amazon to breathe. This is all one planet. We're connected. And this is why I went out to make this film, is I wanted to create an emotional connection again. And I always work through characters. My films are always very character
Right.
driven.
Right.
And it was like a journey of like, how do I find someone who could be the voice of the Amazon? And this time, different from my previous films, I didn't want to do like an encyclopedia on the topic. I just
Right.
wanted to make a really like character-driven, emotional film full of empathy and like, where you follow someone's journey of the fight. And going through a long list of people that were recommended to me through NGOs and journalists and filmmakers working in Brazil and on the ground, somehow this name Juma Xipaia popped up. And I was curious because I could actually not find anything on her. And when I asked around, the one journalist who had put her name on said, "Well, she's an amazing person, but she's in hiding right now because she had just survived the sixth attempt on her life, barely survived." And she
Incredible.
didn't want
That's
to talk to
incredible.
anyone. And she had gone into the forest, into hiding, and she was like disconnected from the planet because she was in fear. And I was like, I want to meet that person. Like, can you make an introduction? And it took
Right.
some
Right.
time. And look, when we got on that first video call, I knew I had found someone very special because the way she was able to communicate her pain and her fight and her struggles, and the way she brought poetry into her wording. The way she saw the world really resonated with me. I was deeply moved. I was like crying on the call, like holding back tears, to be honest. And I felt if she has this power over me on the first call, over a video connection, really bad from
Right.
the
Right.
Amazon, imagine what I could do if I would be allowed to follow her over some time with a professional camera and spend time. And that's how the whole journey began.
And let me ask you, because we're in a moment in the documentary world where who's telling whose story and the issues of access and representation are incredibly important. And this is a film where as a filmmaker, you're not Indigenous, right? It's not your struggle. And so in this film, you crafted a partnership in a way. Juma is actually a producer on the film. You've
Mhm.
talked sometimes about a process of co-creation or collaboration. And so in this documentary moment where people are really thinking, how can we be accountable to communities? How can we tell stories in a way where it's not just me as the filmmaker flying in? You tried to construct a partnership. And so I'd love if you would just walk us through, what were the initial conversations and how did you navigate and ultimately come up with maybe a model that then had to evolve till you really found a way to work together on this film?
Yeah, that's a very good and very important question. And so it was actually on that very first call that I realized two things. One, Juma needs to be in control of the film
Mhm.
because of her security situation. I'm not gonna come in and make a film about her. I was offering for her to tell her story, and I'm gonna help you tell your story. Like
Right.
I approached it from that level from the beginning because she needed to understand that she has control over the film, over the narrative, what will be shown, what will not be shown. So I initially, right from the start, offered her a co-directing credit, which
Mm.
then later
Wow.
became a producer credit, which I can
Right.
explain. But I wanted her to tell her story in her beautiful, poetic way and just use my skills to tell to let her tell that story in the most beautiful way. And she loved this idea. And when she talks about the film, she actually refers to this moment of like, here's someone who's not telling me I have these plans and I have a script and I have a treatment and I have this idea.
Right.
I just said, I just want to listen to your story, and wherever it goes, this will be the film. So there's going to be no narrative. We don't have a set plan. We don't even have a timetable. We'll do it in the Indigenous way, where you're going to start telling your story, and we'll see where it takes us, you know? And little did I know where it would take us. It was a crazy roller coaster ride. But all I knew is I wanted to be close to her and empower her to have that level of control over the film. And what happened was very early on, she loved it. And also, by the way, I had to learn Portuguese right away. So I eliminated the translator because the translator was a security risk that she couldn't have because the translator could give away information that was critical. So I learned
That's amazing just
Portuguese.
to pick up Portuguese, just, here
Well,
we
I
go.
spoke Spanish, which helped.
Right.
But it took me like 6 months
Right.
of really taking courses, and by now I'm better with Portuguese and Spanish, so I'm almost fluent, I would say, quite fluent. And but what happened was that so as we went along through on this journey, by the time we were actually ready to go into production and really start the film, and we had all all the means together to make it possible, because of COVID, there was a lot of delays and there
Right.
was a lot of
Right.
issues. When we were ready to go, she just had joined, like literally like 2 months later, she joined the Ministry of Indigenous People. She was called in because of the Lula government came into power. And again, everything shifted because here we were having a co-directing deal with her, but the ministry said, no, she can't have another job. She's going to hold public office. She needs to be
Right.
available Monday to Friday, 5 days a week. So it's either or. And because we were afraid of losing the movie, the lawyers figured out that a producer credit is actually giving her that freedom. Same control. She will have control over the film, but as a producer, you can work in the evening or on the weekends, and that made it possible. So now she has officially a producer credit. But in the end, this is her film telling her story, and she always said Yanuni is from the territory to the world. This is how she communicates the film. This is how we tour together. I give her the word and let her talk about the film because I wanted it to be from the territory to the world, and I was just helping her make the film. That's how I saw it from the beginning, and we're still on this path. This was like 6 years ago that we met, and now here we are presenting the film around the world with that same narrative, that same story, and I think she really owns it. She's coming now the third time to the US to present a film. She's been in Europe also, so we're going on a final tour, and she's coming with Hugo, her husband, and with our Indigenous executive producer Eric Terena, who also helped with putting all the logistics together and the soundtrack of the film and the editing. And one last thing also, which was very important for her and for me, the very first time we showed the film, the first cut,
Right.
it wasn't yet a fine cut, it was like a rough cut, was in her territory.
Right.
And nobody saw it before, not even our investors, producers.
Right. Right.
They saw it first. We arranged a screening in her village, put up a big screen. They like baked popcorn and had all these drinks ready, and it was like a movie theater. And then I joined via Zoom for a Q&A, and they gave me all these notes, like it was fantastic because they felt they own it. They said, "Oh, I love this scene." Some people said, "I want to join IBAMA now." Now that they understand what they're doing, the Environmental Protection Agency, like I want to burn these terrible places and the mines, and they were crying with Juma. They were laughing, and they gave us some notes of like the edit. It was wonderful, and Juma felt this is our film, and that was so important for us.
I mean, it's super important, and I have questions on lots of other areas. But before we move on from this, just as a filmmaker, and I'm sure other filmmakers will be fascinated as well, how do you think the film is different from because of her and their contributions? In what ways, is what we're seeing on the screen different from the film that would just have been made by you, this
Right.
version that is collaboratively made?
I think she brought the poetry to the film and also
Mm,
the slower pace. Often
right,
she's like, less is more, Richard, let's just take it easy. And it was in the time of reflection of hers, when she was contemplating whether she wants to stay in the ministry or if she needs to go back to the forest, or these moments of motherhood, and
right,
impending. That was very important for her, for example, that we include the scene where she actually forgot her son to pick it up from school and she was devastated. But she said, I need people to understand this is our fight, and our fight is multi-level. We are
right,
mamas. Many of us has
right,
4, 5, 6, 8 children. We're dealing with a lot. So I as a male white guy, I don't think could have made such a personal film of a mother that
right,
is fighting
right,
for her people, and that I really allowed the film as well to take the pace of the indigenous time frame, time and space. Sometimes it's just slower. Yes, it picks up again with Ibama and when her Hugo comes in, but there are these moments that are very poetic, that are very slow moving, that are contemplation of her mind. And she wanted it to be this way because this is how she is. This is how she perceives life. It's all about dreams, she says. Everything that
right.
happens, she dreams it before. So we have also these abstract moments, of the burning forest in the night. That was her idea, for example, that I just want flames, no, and just soundscapes, no music, because this is how I dream sometimes, just in these images, and they flare up and then they cause me to react in certain ways. So I think a lot of that came from her, and I've used the word a lot now in this Q&A about poetry, but she is an indigenous poet in my mind, and she brought that to the screen. Yeah,
No, no, that's really beautiful, and I think there are a lot of interludes in the film where we get to watch, a bird on a branch, or we have a moment in the clouds, or a sense of dawn or sunset, um, where I feel like what we hear from her a lot of the time, which is, I need to go back to the forest, that's a source of renewal. I think that is built into the language of the film, and it's very beautiful to hear that partly comes from all of her collaboration. So let's kind of
absolutely.
transition. And so, at what point did you realize this isn't just going to be a film about Juma? It's going to be about Juma and Ugo, her partner.
Well, I didn't know she even had a husband when we started the film. She
Right,
was very secretive about her private life. I didn't know about her children. It was like step by step. So the first time I met her husband was when we pick him up at the airport. And I had no idea who is this guy. I'd never seen him before.
right,
I don't know what he does. So it was literally like getting to know each other as we were filming that I realized when especially when he went home. I was still filming and he was unpacking his bags, and there was like a big gun, like a pump gun and like a machine gun. And I'm just like, holy shit, like he must be government, but like what exactly? So when I understand that he is actually the leading commander of the Environmental Protection Agency of Brazil, who runs his own special forces that goes against illegal miners, I was like mesmerized, because here I had suddenly a way to show the battle on the front lines. Because with Juma, that would have been impossible. Juma can never even approach an illegal mining site
Right.
because it's way too dangerous. They would simply kill them. If indigenous approach, they are the enemy, they will be shot. So the only way to show the devastation would be through him. So I discussed it with them and said, I really need to see the evil that is happening, and the destructive forces of these illegal operations. And then we started a process together that took about 3 to 4 months of getting through the paperwork and the
Right.
whole like permits. And then they actually finally allowed me to join a mission. And I was the first filmmaker to be allowed to go with Ibama ever. They had journalists with them for 1 day trips that are all organized. They're in safe areas. They're never dangerous. Here we went on real missions, and it took about, over the course of 6 months, I joined them on 4 missions, each of them between 2 weeks and 3 weeks, very intense. And I had to do it all alone. Like they would only allow one person on the helicopters. I needed to take my food. I needed to do all my supplies, do all this technical stuff, the sound, the filming, the offloading, the droning, everything. And they said, in case there's gunfire, or like hostile activity, we can't really protect you, because we're already down one man, because you're taking the seat of a soldier that would be with us. So
Right.
our security is actually down by one man. So we will just have to make sure we get through it. And, so if you hear gunshots, just hide somewhere and hope for the best and just stay behind. We will do our best, but we're not there for you. So you're the fly on the wall, and good luck. It was really
Wow.
like, Jesus, it was a pretty
And you signed
intense
up for
thing.
that. You heard that
Well,
and
I
said,
really wanted
I'm
it.
in.
I really
Right.
wanted it, and I trained for it. I took some hostile environment training and stuff.
Right.
I had to wear a bulletproof vest and kind of
Yep. Yep.
understand what to do in case of kidnapping, and we really tried to mitigate risk at all levels. But in the end, it was one of the most dangerous things that I could ever do. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, this guy's doing it like every day,
Right.
so I'm gonna survive, 3 or 4 missions. And I felt I just owe it to Juma to tell the complete picture, to show this other side through a character-driven story, that it will not divert from her story too much, but it will just give us this other perspective. And that's how I ended up, going on these missions with him. And it was also fascinating to see the dynamic between them, because Juma, as a mom, and him being, a future father, it was really scary for her, to
Right.
know the
Right.
missions. And I showed her footage of like what is happening on these missions. A lot of the stuff she didn't know. I mean, the one
Wow.
time when that chain happened, where we almost blew
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
I showed her the raw 3 minutes of that. It's basically like it is in the movie. I just showed her that whole thing. And she broke down in tears, and she was devastated because she didn't understand how close to the edge her
Right.
husband
Right.
is when he goes out on these missions. He doesn't talk about it, and that's a little bit in the film. When that happened, he just called her like, yeah, I'm sorry I'm late. It was, I had to do something else. I think he said an interview with some journalists, and he didn't mention what happened, that he almost died, and we all almost died. But that is their reality. They
Right.
live very close to the edge, both of them. And I wanted to portray it in the best possible way.
I mean, I think one of the really beautiful juxtapositions in the film, there's a moment after one of the missions where he's in like a t-shirt and has the young boy up on his shoulders, and he's just in this gentle, caring, familial moment. And yet we've just lived this moment with him where he's absolutely at the edge of great danger and also trying to enforce a great kind of, hopefully justice. And so that juxtaposition to me is also what film is so good at doing, is showing how one person can have those different layers and experiences.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
l-
Yeah.
Let me ask you, I mean, you spent many, many years doing environmental, related filmmaking. And I think something that's fascinating about this film is we see Juma, who is an activist and an indigenous leader, get this position in a government ministry. And so all of a sudden, it's like, okay, here are perhaps a little bit of the controls of power, although, we start to learn later in the film about the limits of that power. But in the end, these environmental issues, issues of illegal mining, um, these are tremendously difficult issues to solve. And what we see in the film is that once Juma enters the ministry, she and her colleagues ultimately also are kind of asked to solve problems that are almost unsolvable without the full power of the government. And so I just wonder if you could reflect both on her transition for that period of time from activist to policymaker, or at least important member of this ministry, and also this bigger question of making films, which is a kind of activism in a way, and the big jump towards solutions for these problems that you're trying to tackle or grapple with in your filmmaking.
Yeah. Well, look, we really wanted to show the reality of what it's like. You know, suddenly she's on the other side of power. She's been fighting government all her life. That's
Right,
all she knew. Government is evil. Government are the bad guys. Suddenly she's called to be government.
right,
And suddenly all indigenous people make her responsible for all the failures and all the things that are not working. Because now it's up to you. You're in government now. You're the power. And that's when reality kicks in, that just because she's a secretary of Indigenous rights and just because they have a ministry doesn't mean that they can suddenly pass laws and demarcate Indigenous land. It's going to be an equally hard fight. And we wanted to show the reality of that, of like governing is really difficult and it's extremely stressful and the pressure only rises. And it was important for us to show it as it is. Also, it was important for her. She said, "I need people to understand that just because we are there doesn't mean this is the end of the fight. We're going to be fighting for decades to come. We now have a seat in government, yes, but things are not easy at all. There's fights every day. There's stress every day. There's so much pressure coming at us. So for her, when we talk about her producing role, she felt it was vital to show how hard it is
right,
to be in
right,
government and to be on the other side. She needed to show her people that this is not a done deal. Now she's in the city, she has a salary, and now she's great and she can make, everything change. No, it's still a battle. And it's for her, it was critical also to show that she breaks on that, like she personally breaks down because
right, right,
she's incapable of dealing with also the deception and also the disappointments that come with not being able to get everything done, and realizing that when the people find out, they're going to blame me, they're going to blame
right,
us in government. How do we deal with that? So all this, I wanted to bring it into the film so that it's not a heroic love story or like classical, like, look how great this is and now they're in government and now this. No, the battle is on a very personal level. And I really felt we need to unlock this film by giving people access to the innermost sanctuary of like life, of family, and of grappling with all these levels of power and being able to handle it or not handle it. So in a way, it's a fragile film. It
right,
breaks
right,
every time. There is a lot of like care we had to take of like how do we balance it so it's most accurate, but we hope we did a good job. Juma's happy with it. She reviewed it many times with her people, also with the government people in government, with the
right,
minister Sonia. Like, it's honest. That's
Right.
what they said. It's the honest truth, and this is what it is. And in the end, it comes down to family, to hope, to never giving up hope, to understanding that they are in this fight together as a collective. We are in this together. We need to hold together. Otherwise, we can give up right now. And that's what this movie is about. And a lot of it is also about love, and not love between a couple, but
Right.
love of
Right.
family,
It's
of
bigger. It's much bigger.
children, of community, of being one with nature, and fighting, willing to give your life for it, for the love of it.
Well, and thinking from her activism to the activism that the film itself can do, you're at a moment, we're at a global moment where everyone is seeing climate change happen. We're seeing, what indigenous communities are suffering. We're obviously seeing what's happening, in and around the Amazon. So, what are your impact plans? This is a
Mm,
spectacular film that really will reach people in every single of the ways you're describing. How can the film itself make an impact?
right. Well, the one thing we need, of course, is distribution, which we're looking for right now. We
Right.
hope we're going to find it because the film needs to be seen by everyone, and especially by the Brazilians who do not understand what's going on in the Amazon. There's like 300 plus million Brazilians, and I think 90% have no idea of indigenous people in the Amazon, the value of the Amazon and the forest. They are so kind of like disconnected at times. Like I felt in the big cities, they don't really understand that this is a jewel that needs to be preserved. So I needed to be publicly seen and debated. We're very lucky that it won the audience award in Sao Paulo, which was for us the biggest deal because it's a huge
Congratulations.
festival. And
Congratulations.
that was like Juma cried when she heard that because she didn't think that the southern Brazilian, the big city people would
Right.
actually like and enjoy the film. But this was fantastic. But for us, right now on the impact side, we work with Earth Alliance, who's our
Great.
impact partner on this. We have a big campaign going that supports specifically the Juma Institute, which is the institute she founded 5 years ago, that needs to be empowered to protect her territory and then serve in a way as a guiding, like a North Star of like, this is how the territories can prevail. This is how they can be protected. She wants to use all her knowledge as a leader and as a former politician, to and everything she learned at the ministry and on that level to bring her territory into the safe zone because they're being attacked from all sides as well, which is why she eventually returned to the territory because they are under fire and they need a leader, a strong leader to protect them and to preserve the Xipaia territory. And that's why she went back and she's now back in the forest, back with her people to really fight this battle. And we want to empower that Juma Institute so that it can sustain on a 3 to 5 year plan
Right.
her people, provide jobs, provide education, give them hope, give them security and protection. And this is what we're campaigning for. Besides the film and the awards campaign, we're very strong on the impact side. So we're trying to get it shown to politicians. We showed it at the
Right.
climate conference 3 times. We presented the film
Fantastic.
to government
Fantastic.
leaders. We have big NGOs involved, Amazon Watch and Greenpeace and WWF. They're all coming aboard to join this movement of the film. So I think we have a strong and solid plan. It's very professionally laid out. Earth Alliance is an amazing partner. They work together with Rewild, and they are both very strongly connected to Leonardo DiCaprio, which is, one of our producers who's very, very keen on supporting the
Right.
Juma Institute.
Right.
So, so we have a good, solid plan. And if you go to our Instagram, YANUNI Film, in the link in bio, you can find the whole kind of funding plan and impact plan and what to do once you've seen the film and how you can support and help. This is for NGOs, for governments,
Great.
for private donors, for philanthropists. It's like a whole menu where hopefully everyone can find something if they feel connected to the film, which we hope they are once they've seen it.
Well, I'm sure they will be once they see it. And it's fantastic that there are all of those impact plans around the film. And, in terms of distribution, absolutely rooting that it gets the biggest and widest distribution it can.
Fingers crossed.
We're pretty much at our time limit, but if we could give the last word to Juma, I know in your global campaigning and traveling, you're doing a lot of Q&As with Juma. What message do you think Juma would want to leave with the audience as sort of the final word in this discussion?
Juma always gets the final word when she's around.
As she
Obviously,
should.
here she's not here right now, but the one thing she really wants is that the world starts to listen to the indigenous people, to listen what is happening in the Amazon, because we have stopped listening to these voices and we have just disconnected, like there's this beautiful scene in the film that is so reflective on how she thinks. She looks at the New York skyline and she wonders if these people living in these concrete boxes will
Right.
ever be able to feel their pain, feel their suffering, and if any one of them is actually listening. So this is what we want. This is what Juma wants, for the world to listen. YANUNI is from the terre to the world, and now the world needs to please listen and also share once they've seen the film, its values, and that it's a must see in order for us to protect the indigenous people and protect the Amazon because they're one. Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful message from Juma, and congratulations, because it's also a beautiful message that comes through very, very powerfully in this film, which is so cinematic. And congratulations. It's just a great film and so important at this moment. So thank you, and good luck with the impact and taking this film forward.
Thank you so much, Robert. This was wonderful. It's very deep conversation. Thank you.
It's great. It's wonderful. Okay, thanks so much, Richard.